And now we're going to look at chapter 1. Okay. So, chapter 1, and you all have seen this before. You input data, you process data, and you output the data. Okay. And so below right here is some simple pseudocode. You all heard of pseudocode before, right? Okay. So basically we're creating two input numbers, two variables, number 1 and number 2. And then we want to have two functions, to speak in Python or C or whatever. We want to have two functions that will add and multiply those two numbers together. So what we're going to do is we're going to you've been real familiarized with procedural programming language thus far in your career at Henry Ford. How many people have heard of object-oriented programming? Well, we're going to be doing object-oriented programming in this class. And so what is an object? An object is anything, okay? So, so what we're doing here is we're creating a description for an object that's a calculator. Okay, let's say you got a real simple calculator. You can put two numbers into it and you can do either addition or multiplication. Okay, so a class always consists of two things: properties and procedures. Okay, and this is going to be familiar with whatever object-oriented class uh, language you take. They'll have they'll have properties and procedures and or methods. Now, what are properties? They're basically variables that contain data. Okay, so we in this case they're the variables number 1 and number 2. Okay, what are methods? They are functions. They are functions that are specific to the class calculator. So, so in this case, we have two methods. One's for add and one's for multiply. And I bet you, if I asked you right now to make two more methods, what would they be? Yep.
Divide and subtract.
Yep. They would be subtract and divide, or subtraction and division. Okay? Again, methods are just functions. Okay? That are specific to the class of calculator. So don't get super confused. You've learned a lot about this already. So in object-oriented programming, we can do things, and this is the code right here, according to this class, of how to incorporate this class into our programming code. All right. So if we look at this code down here, and if we remember this class right here, what we see is we see that we have 5 lines of code. Okay. 5 lines of code. And by the way, this would be code somewhere in your project. Okay. This would be code as well. But to use this code, we have these lines of code. So the first thing we do is we create an instance of this class. Think of a class as the description. Okay. But when you create an instance, what you're doing is you're making that alive in your program that you can now use it. Up until that point, it was just a description, you couldn't use it. But once you do this calculator, calc equals new calculator, that line creates what we call as an instance. Okay. In your regular world where you're running your computer, you can run some of your programs more than once. Did you know that? So sometimes you can have let's say Excel running twice. They would each be an instance of Excel.
So this is essentially the main function in Python, right?
Yeah, we've started. You can actually do all this in Python too.
Yeah, of course. I'm talking about the code snippet that you provided over here, which is,
Yeah. Now this is actually C sharp, but yeah.
yeah, I'm saying it's similar to the main function in Python. This is how you run the program and, you know,
Yeah.
it's like,
So right here, this is a function.
yeah,
So instead of having public, you would put function.
yeah, I understand that.
Okay. All right. All right. And then the next two lines, what we are doing is we're using a dot notation to say, hey, for this instance of calculator, which is calc, set that number one variable equal to 20 and the number two variable equal to 15. Now, again, they're variables, but they're really called properties for object-oriented programming. And I'm going to show you what this means in C sharp very shortly. Okay.
Because they are the properties of the object, right?
Hmm?
Because they are the properties of the object. That's why they are called properties.
Properties, yeah.
Because they are the properties of the object.
They are the properties of the object.
Yeah.
You know. They contain the data of the object. Okay? All right. And then to actually run the method or the function, you just call it, just like you do in Python. You call the function. Now, we didn't have to pass any parameters because we actually set the parameters, which are properties. Okay? So if I were writing a function for add, I would have to pass number one and number two. Okay? But here you just have to set the properties. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, we're going to be doing this all semester. So, and then finally, we use this is how we write it out to our console. Okay. Now, by the way, console is an object. And write line is what? To console.
Property.
Nope.
It would be a function.
It'd be a function, a method. So console is its own object that's built in. Okay? It's built into the system. But write line is a method of console. And so every time you did this in Python, you were using classes in Python too. You just didn't know it. Okay. And then you tell what you want printed, and in this case, it's the result, which is right here, which is also what? A property. Well, we set that property anytime we run this. Okay. And if we wanted to create another instance of calculator, we could call it Calc 2, for example. And then we talk about instances, we talk about properties, and this is how it works. All right. Everything, all the programming language you're going to be using for now on will probably be object oriented. Okay. I mean, Python's object oriented too. You can make classes and all that with that. So, okay. All right. So now on to, that was just all just to get you thinking about classes. And now we're going to take a look at this. So let's say we want to create a project in Visual Studio. Okay. So C# was originally meant to be C-like object-oriented language. But because I guess there's something cool was trademark, they couldn't call it cool. So they called it C#. Okay? And not C#, not C#, but C#. And this is how it looks. And that's why they have the £sign here. Okay? Or the hashtag. Now, the platform is, what operating system are you going to run under? And the project type is going to be desktop or console. Either one of these we'll be using, okay? And then finally, there's going to be a core. And this is explained really well in the book, but the core is this middle area that sits between your code and the operating system. Okay? And what it has a lot of stuff in here that is available to you as a programmer that you can use. Okay? But Microsoft does all the translation of all that, handles all that, and the idea is that you get a nice user, a GUI interface development environment, and they do all the hard work behind the scenes. Okay. Now, Visual Studio has gotten a lot better over the years, but there's so much going on with it. It's amazing. Okay. But you're going to be able to write very powerful programs by using Visual Studio and C#. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create ourselves a little program. Okay. We're going to screw around a little bit. Is that all right? So we're going to do this one right here. You see that? We're not going to do framework. We're going to do this one. And I'm going to explain as we go along. So to bring up Visual Studio, you just go to your apps and you go down to V. Anybody know why it's under V?
Visual Studio.
Because it's Visual Studio. All right. And then you just bring up Visual Studio right here. Right here. And you just look for this sign. Their little logo. Okay. And so Visual Studio is going to come on up. And you're going to, it's going to ask you what colors you want to use. You don't need to sign in. Hopefully you won't have to at home either. I don't like the black. So I use this one. And it does this thing. And you're going to come up to a screen like this, okay? Now the screen here is going to have all your past projects that you've done. And so you'll have a list of those and you can just bring those up. In this case, we're going to create a new project. Now, there's a whole slew of different projects that you can create, okay? We're going to select right here, C#, not C++, C#. And then platforms, we're going to go with all platforms. And project types, we can either go with desktop or console. We'll go with console. Now let's go with desktop. Okay. And then you have to find the right one here after all of these filters are on. And this would be the right one right here. Okay. So let's go, let's click that and say next. Again, you call whatever you want. This is going to be interesting, and I'm going to show you how to set it up on your computer. Because I'm going to have you put everything under CIS 130. Okay? And whether you're at the school or at home, it's going to be the same subdirectory structure. Okay? So all your assignments will be in one folder. All the lessons will be in another folder. All the tests will be in another folder. All right. Your projects, the homework will be in its own folder too.
What did you click for the desktop? Just next after that?
So where it says next, so what you're going, did you select this one?
Oh, which one is that?
You might have to go down a ways.
The Windows format.
Windows Forms app, C# Windows Desktop.
Okay.
Okay. Then go next. It's going to give you a default here. All right. To say next. And we are going to be using .NET 8.0. Let me explain the difference. So you'll see .NET Framework, and then you'll just see .NET. We want to use .NET, okay? .NET Framework is only for Windows. .NET, it's called .NET Core, but they don't include the core. It's a default, is for every environment that you can use, okay? Windows, maybe Mac, iOS or whatever it's called, Linux, okay? So they made the .NET Core handle multiple operating system platforms. That's what we're going to use, okay? So, and by the way, if you see, I'm trying to switch everything, but we used to use .NET 7.0. If you see, if for whatever reason it says it doesn't have .NET installed, don't install it. I'll show you what to do. We're going to use .NET 8 though. So we're creating a project right now. It's writing out the whole thing for you. And I just want to walk you around here a little bit. All right, by default, it creates a form for you. And a form would be what?
A window?
What?
A window?
It's a window, it creates a window. But form is an object, okay? Everything's an object. So form is an object, and every form has what two things? What does every object have? Properties and methods. Properties and methods. Okay, I'm going to explain that.
I have a question.
Text box in. Yes.
Do they also have parameters where you would pass in from other objects or no?
No, for object-oriented programming, parameters for all intents and purposes are called properties.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. It's not that we don't pass things. We can also create functions within C#. Okay, don't get me wrong, and you can pass parameters, but
But we
an
just use
object has-
properties instead.
Hmm?
But
Say
we
that
just
again?
use properties instead.
Well, if you truly create a function in C#, you can pass parameters. But if you are using an object, okay, all the functions within an object use the properties. Okay?
Understood. Yeah.
All right. So you're actually setting properties in most cases. All right. So, like I said, form is an object. It's in this case, it's called form1. So we've created an instance called form1 here. Now, let's take a look at form1's properties. How do we do that? We just go view and we bring up properties windows, and look right down in your right hand corner, you see the properties for this object. You know, the color, the size, the font that it's going to take. All those things are right down here. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to follow a syntax, my naming syntax for my different objects. And in this case, because it's a form, I'm going to start with FRM. And I'll just call it form Brett, my first name. Okay. So I just renamed it. Now, one of the problems is it doesn't always change up here. We'll work with that shortly. But another thing is the title of the form. I'm going to change that to Brett. Okay. And watch what happens right here is I hit enter, it changes that name. So I've done two things to my form. I could do multiple things. All the properties are listed in categories, or you can list them alphabetically. You can toggle between either. Okay. Like let's say I knew I wanted background color, and I didn't know what category that would fall in. I could go right here and I could change my color. Let's say I change it to that. Okay. Now these are all really cool things. Now, one of the problems is that this doesn't always rename everything. So sometimes if I want to rename everything to FRM Brett, I have to do it here as well. Okay. And now it's been renamed. Everything under it is good. All right. So what you see here is the actual GUI of this, okay? But there's also code that Microsoft has written for you. And this is the code. This is the class of FRM Brett. Okay? So it's written stuff that you won't necessarily need to know in this class. Okay, but all this code was written from what we did in the GUI. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So again, Microsoft is doing a lot of stuff for you. Okay. Now, if we want to see the additional code that's been written, watch this. See some of the things we for example, when we change the property of the background color, look what's happened. It changed the code. Okay. Same thing with the text. Now, why am I telling you all this? Is that you, just like Microsoft did it for you, you can also do that. You just wouldn't do it here. You would do it somewhere else. In what's typically called the code behind for the form. Okay? So, all this is being done for you. All right. So I'm going to close this down. Now, let's add a text box. And you say, well, how do we add a text box? Good question. Well, there's a whole bunch of tools that are available to you. And these tools, again, are objects, which have defined classes for them. So we're going to add a bunch of, we're going to be able to look at this. Let's take a look at all the tools that are available for you. Okay, and let me pin this here. All right, so all of these tools.
How did he pick that?
Okay, so let's start. Let me close it down. Oh, let me delete this. All right, so you go to View,
Okay.
and you're going to go to Toolbox. Okay. And because I've already put it there, it showed up. Okay. But you're going to, you can expand all the window form objects. Because that's what we're using. We're using a window form. Okay. Now, all these objects are now available to you. And anybody want to guess how we get one of these objects onto our form? Click and drag.
Which one are you choosing?
Yeah. You drag it to wherever you want it. Okay. So now we're dealing with two objects. One object is the form, the other object is the toolbox. I mean, the text box. And with the text box, okay, we can modify things like with this. For example, let's say I want to modify the name of the text box. And I like calling all my text boxes TXT. Let's say, I know it's a little redundant, but let's say text box 1. Okay, so I just named that. I can put a default into here. Let's say I want a default, uh, let's say I want to put some text into here. Let's say um, it's going to be for my name, for a name. I'll say Brett or whatever. And then if I type that in, it puts Brett in there. I can make this larger by dragging it, obviously, where it's positioned. All these things are handled with properties. Okay? Now, there's going to be code for this now that Microsoft has written for you. So if we go in the code, oh, I don't want to go in that. So we can see our toolboxes in here. All right. Our text box that we just created. And it's basically created a text box. Text box would be the class, okay, the description. And we made an instance called TX text box 1. And of course, in your form, you could have a whole bunch of text boxes. Now, just to show you a little bit more, since we got a few minutes, let's say I want to add a button. Okay. Let's say a submit button. Every form needs a submit button, right? So let's find button. Let's drag it to where we want it. Now we can say, we can name this something like, let's call it button submit.
So essentially, we're adding properties into the GUI and then programming each property to do its own thing, technically.
Basically, what we're doing is we're adding objects. Okay, we're
Right, yeah,
adding
object.
objects onto our form.
And then adding the
And
properties for each object that we add into the GUI.
then we modify the properties to have it be named what is for us. So in this case, I'm naming the button BTN for button submit. It's going to be my submit button. And guess what I'm going to put in there for text? Anybody know? Submit.
Submit.
Correct. So we're going to make that submit. So
There's already a class called button in the Visual Studio.
there's what? Say that.
There's already a class called button in the Visual Studio.
Yeah.
And you're creating objects, and we can create as many objects or as many paths.
Yeah. There's already for C#, there's already a class for button. There's already a class for text box. There's already a class for form. And they have a whole bunch of properties that we can set. And they also have methods. And I'm going to show you that real quickly. Okay. So let's make this submit. All right. Now, here's where the programming happens for you, for the most part. If I double click on this, I could also go to view code. But if I double click on this, it's going to create a method for us. It's really the default method for a button. So I'm going to double click right here. And it created a method. Okay. didn't put it where I wanted though. I want it's doing the form method. I really wanted. Let me go back. I wanted a method for submit. It didn't happen. Okay, but anyways, it created the code behind for the form. I don't know why it didn't create anything for the submit. So I could start writing code right here. Okay. For example, let's say I wanted to put the tab stop at my text box. I could do that. Okay. So there's different things that I can do. I don't know. Oh, so and you can see I have my private button submit here. Oh, I got an error. Form Brett does not contain a definition. Well, then we want to, that's what we want to make. Okay. So this button submit right here. So this would be a method for the button submit. And we need to put the code for this in here. Okay. Now, but you see how all of these are created? Like this button submit, it says new button class. Okay. Text box, new text box class. All right. Set our properties. The only thing it doesn't like is I don't have a method for submit click. So this is the default method for a button is click. Now for text, it's going to be another default. And you can create as many methods as you want for each object. Okay. This is I know that this doesn't make a lot of sense yet. Okay. But this is only first day, so we'll have a test on 2 weeks from Monday. No, just kidding. So anyway, I just wanted to show you what's going on here. And we would have to write, and I'm not going to write it, we would have to write, to get rid of this error, we have to write this method. Okay? So we have to write, and that would be a function. So we're not going to do that tonight, but do you see how fun this can be? Now, why do you think I think this is fun?
Creating stuff.
What?
For creating something.
You're creating something very powerful, but just think about it. Okay? All this code was written for you by doing what? By simply dragging stuff into your form. Okay? I'm going to comment this out so I'm quick getting the error. Okay? So we can see the form. Okay? Just by dragging those two things in there. Visual Studio wrote all that code for you. Now, That's an important thing. Because we want you as a programmer to spend a busy time writing these functions and methods and everything that's going to be happening. We don't want you to be worried about putting code in for each text box and code in for each button. Does that make sense? We want you doing the complicated things, like where to put the bolts in how to hit bolts in Battleship. We want you to code those type of things, the complicated things. All the mundane things, Visual Studio will handle for you. Make sense? It's a code writer for you. All right. So what I'm going to do is by Wednesday, you'll see a video out there that I'm going to go over for you. And it's going to be going over the lab activity 1. And in this activity, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to start from scratch. So I'm going to be doing it like I'm doing it from scratch, okay? But I'm going to set up your student lab, your CIS 130 student folder with all the necessary subfolders under that by running this. And then I'm going to take and then I'm going to bring in the financial calculations project, and I'm going to walk through that. Okay. And all the steps are here for that. If you want to try it yourself, you're more than welcome to. Okay. So I'll do the financial calculations, and maybe I'll have you do the splash one afterwards. Sound good? Now, I won't be seeing you for 2 weeks. So, make sure you get your never attended project written. It's very easy. That will tell me if you have a problem with the Visual Studio IDE. If you have any problems, let me know. Email me. If we have to meet, we'll meet. All right. Any questions?
All good.
I
Thank
know
you,
it's
Jeff.
a lot of stuff for the first day.